His scholarship is phenomenal. He's written 18 published books, which puts all of us, the rest of us, to shame. I'll just mention a few of them. The Maya, he was writing when I was at graduate school and came out in 1966. The Maya Scribe in His World, Lords of the Underworld, In the Land of the Olin, published with Richard Deal, Breaking the Maya Code, The True History of Chocolate with his wife, Sophie Deco, The Art of the Maya Scribe with Justin Kerr, Reading the Maya Glyphs with Mark Van Stone, Encore and the Khmer Civilization, and a work called Final Report, An Archaeologist Excavates His Past. That's an autobiography. He's been a member of the National Academy of Sciences since 1986. He was given the Tatiana Proskoryakov Award by Harvard University in 1989, the James D. Burke Prize in Fine Arts from the St. Louis Art Museum, the Order of the Quetzal from the government of Guatemala, the Orden del Pope of Museo Popol Vuh, and the Linda Shealy Award, University of Texas. He's currently co-authoring a book on Maya cities with photographer Barry Brokaw. Mike is known to all of his friends and his former students like me as a spellbinding raconteur, and also a person with infectious joie de vivre. So please join me in welcoming Michael Coe.
This is a really tough audience because some of you probably have never heard of the Popol Vuh. Others here are the world's experts on the Popol Vuh. To mention a lecture to an audience this disparate is really difficult. But I hope I can convince you that, can you all hear me? I hope I can convince you that the Popol Vuh is the single most important document that comes to us from the pre-Columbian past. I think it's the greatest work of literature from the New World period, and absolutely essential thing to know and to read for any student of pre-Columbian America. Now, the Popol Vuh is probably was, according to Alan Christensen, who is one of the great experts on this subject, probably written in the, down using Roman characters, Latin characters, in the mid-16th century, not long after the Spanish conquest, and written in Quiche Maya. The Quiche, this is the actually mythological and historical past of the Quiche people. This manuscript, the original manuscript, has disappeared. It was written then. But in the 18th century, a Dominican friar named Francisco Jimenez, in the very early 18th century, as you can see here, he managed to make a copy of this and did a Spanish translation from the Quiche Maya. His manuscript that he worked on is a rather complicated story. According to Alan Christensen, has disappeared, but he had made another copy that showed up. Next one, please. He was the friar, Dominican friar, and the parish priest of Chichicastenango, which is a Quiche town, almost completely Quiche, in the Maya Highlands. And this is where he worked and found this manuscript. And he made a Spanish translation of it, side by side. Next one, please. Chichicastenango, if you've ever been there, it's a wonderful place. A little bit cold in the wintertime, but it's, you can see every Sunday an incredible market there with Mayas burning incense on the steps of the church. Inside the church is magnificent. It's a wonderful syncretism between Spanish Catholicism and native Maya religion. That's a Quiche lady swinging incense here. In the mid-19th century, an Austrian scholar, and traveler, and geographer named Karl von Schürzer came through, and he saw that manuscript. That original manuscript was still around in Chichicastenango, and he made a copy of it and translated, put out an edition which is a Spanish, the translation from Padre Jimenez, Father Jimenez. That was the first publication ever in print of the Popol Vuh, published in Vienna in the mid-19th century. Next, please. This guy is really amazing. This is the Abbé Brasseur de Bourbourg, who probably did more in the 19th century to bring the Maya to the knowledge of ancient Maya and Maya documents to the knowledge of the rest of the world than anybody else. He was a French abbé, and he traveled all through the Maya highlands. He was later a parish priest in Rabinal, a Quiche town in the highlands. He found this manuscript of Jimenez, and he published a French translation of it, which is extremely bad, very poor translation. But he was a wonderful guy, really. We owe him a lot. He discovered all kinds of things, like Landa's great description of the Maya. He found in a Madrid library. He found the Madrid Codex, which is one of the 4 known Maya codices. He just did an amazing amount of work. Bit of a screwball because he thought the Maya came from Atlantis, which didn't help his scholarship. But he was a wonderful man. Next, please. This is Leonard Schulze-Jena, who published an extremely good German edition of the Popol Vuh, as you can see, during the war in Berlin, which must have been something with the bombs falling all around. Next, please. The first translation that I ever saw of this, the first edition, was when I was a Harvard student. I turned to anthropology from English literature and decided that I wanted to be a Maya archaeologist. In my my junior and senior years, I began to study the Maya seriously. And I found this wonderful thing had just been published by Adrián Recinos, who was a very distinguished Guatemalan diplomat and a man of letters. And it's a wonderful edition, actually. Particularly, he translated it from the Quiche Maya. There have been better translations since then, but his notes are wonderful, scholarly notes about the background to this incredible document. Next, please. There have been many translations, many editions of the Popol Vuh in every known language you could ever think of. The one on the left is by Monroe Edmondson. The Popol Vuh he translates as a book of counsel, which is probably a pretty good translation. There are various ways to translate this, but his was the first edition time that anybody ever published it in terms of it being poetry. It actually is a poem. The whole thing is laid out as a piece of literature by the people who compiled it, probably back in the pre-Columbian times. And he recognized that. It's got the form of couplets, according to Edmondson. Literary couplets where you say one thing one way and then you say it another way. Kind of thing you find in the Old Testament and the Bible all the time. And various other literatures around the world. His notes are terrible, though, I've got to admit. I wrote a review of this, which he told me he resented tremendously. I was just trying to be fair to him. The notes were nowhere near as good as Recinos's. A wonderful edition is the one on the right by my friend and colleague Dennis Tedlock of the University of New York in Buffalo. And he actually went and learned Quiche Maya, he and his wife Barbara, and they became Quiche daykeepers. They were trained as Quiche priests with the Quiche Maya calendar. And this made a big difference. It's a very good translation, but it doesn't have the poetry of the original in it. Next, please. There's a Russian edition of it, Popol Vuh, which came out in the Soviet Union. As I say, it's been translated into all kinds of languages. Next, please. There are children's books based on the Popol Vuh, because the story is wonderful in it, actually. It's just a natural to make a children's book. And as a matter of fact, there's an animated film made by Patricia Amlin on the Popol Vuh. The minute that I got interested in this, I saw somebody should animate it. It's so good. And luckily, I found Patricia Amlin, who's a Bay Area animator, and that's still being shown. It's a wonderful thing. Next, please. The Popol Vuh has been used as a source for astronomy, for sacred geography. I didn't mention Karen Bassey-Sweet's wonderful book on the sacred geography of this, because all the mountains around in the highlands of Guatemala, the volcanoes, many of them are connected with the Popol Vuh. Next, please. And you're going to be hearing from him tomorrow, Alan Christensen's wonderful translation. He's translated the whole Popol Vuh. This particular edition was just the mythological parts of it. Alan probably knows the Quiche better than even the Quiche know themselves. He's fluent in Quiche, has lived many years with them, he and his family, and with the Tzutu Hill on the south side of the beautiful Lake Atitlan, just immersed in this. And he has discovered not only there are couplets, there are triplets in there poetically, and also reverse couplets, reverse triplets, parallel passages. It's by far, I think, the best edition of this for its notes, and especially for its perception of the way the original Maya were writing and probably reciting this. But the original of this whole thing was probably in hieroglyphs, in a book, which we don't have. All we have is this, and it's an absolutely precious document. Next, please. Now the question is, what's in it? This is just a sketch of what's in this particular book. It starts out with the initial creation of the universe from nothingness, and very poetic and very beautiful description of how the gods got together, the two principal gods got together and dreamed up the universe. People have said, and wrongly, as I think most of us who studied this could say, that it's based on the book of Genesis in the Bible. Well, I was raised on the book of Genesis in the Bible, and this is like saying the only people in the world who ever had an origin myth where you start from nothingness were the people who wrote the book of Genesis in the Bible. That's not true. You find this all over the world. Initially, when the Popol Vuh starts, the person who's narrating it, the Maya, the Quiche Maya, tells you that this is done under Christianity. It doesn't mean it's Christian at all. There's nothing Christian about it, as Alan Christensen has pointed out in his book. So you have the original creation of the universe. And then the gods are jealous gods, like the gods of the Old Testament. They want to be praised. So who's going to praise? They have to create beings who are sensate, who can praise it. They start out with just animals. But the animals can't speak. They don't have language. So that's no good. They're sort of put aside. They're condemned to be hunted and eaten and fished by us. Then they create a creature of mud, a sort of a golem of clay. And he's no good. He can't really speak at all properly. They destroy him. Then they create a race of wooden mannequins. And they're destroyed also. This is the whole idea of creation and destruction occurring cyclically. And there's a flood. And that's the end of him, or of them, of the wooden people. So then you go into part two. And this is where it gets interesting to archaeology because I think it can be demonstrated that the classic Maya knew this very well and were really connected. You have the shooting of a gigantic bird, which they call seven macaw, Wuku Kakish, in Quiche, by a pair of hero twins. And then the defeat of seven macaws' children, this huge bird that claims he's the son, by the hero twins later on. And this is really what grips you. It's a great story, and you'll see it pictorially on the hands of classic Maya artists. And then part 3, more of the hero twins. This is a harrowing of hell, of Scribal, the underworld, where they go into the underworld. Beginning, the first people to go are their father, who's the maize god. And you'll see all of this. I'll show it to you. The birth, and then eventually the birth of the hero twins themselves. So, you know, you get this time that's a little bit out of joint. You get that in the Bible. I mean, after all, in the Bible, there are 2 creations. There's one that takes place at the beginning of Genesis, and then the world is destroyed, and the flood comes, and you have another creation. You get the same kind of thing in the Popol Vuh. And then the resurrection of the maize god. And then part 4 and 5, the mythic origin and history of the Quiche people. But the part that's of interest to what I'm talking about tonight is the stuff that I've outlined in red here. Next one, please. Now this gets a little bit complex. I've got to show you a genealogical chart of the characters in the Popol Vuh. There are, let's see if I can do this right. There's an old grandfather god and an old grandmother god. These are the creator gods who create the rest of the world and people. Shpiakok, the grandfather, and Shmukarne, the grandmother. We know that this guy has to be the great supreme deity of the Maya, Itzamnach. And this has to be his wife, Chakchel. These people show up, you know, in the 4 books and the codices and everything. So that you have a pair of ancestors. They produce 2 offspring, 2 brothers. One called Hunhunapu, the other called Wukuhunapu. Hunhunapu, we now know, thanks to research by another graduate student of mine, Carl Tauber, is the maize god of the Maya. And he marries once through Shpaki Yalo to produce 2 interesting characters, Hun Bat and Hun Twen, who I'll talk about in a second. These 2, Hun Hunapu and Wuhu Hunapu, that's 1 Hunapu and this 7 Hunapu. They're ball players. They grew up to be great ball players. They're playing a noisy ball game and they're forced down into the underworld by the underworld gods. They have to go down these steps into the underworld where they are immediately played tricks on by the lords of the underworld. And they're put into various houses of torture and darkness. I won't go into all the details, but they're bad places, let's put it this way. These lords of the underworld are all named. They're all the names in the Popol Vuh of terrible mortal diseases that can kill you or make you terribly, terribly sick. So they go down and eventually they are bested by the lords of the underworld and killed. And the head of Hunhunapu is hung up in a tree. One day in the underworld, there they are, they're dead, but his head is hanging in a tree. A young lady called Shik, Lady Blood, the daughter of one of the lords of the underworld, is passing by, and the head starts to talk to her. And she holds her hand up to the head spits in her hand, and lo and behold, she's pregnant. After a little while, it becomes clear to the lords of the underworld that she's been a naughty, naughty girl. So they tell her, they expel her from the underworld, and she goes up into the house, the surface of the earth, of the old man and the old woman, her Hunhunapu's parents. And she eventually gives birth. And she gives birth to Hunahpu and Xbalanque. These are the hero twins. These two. These are the main characters in the real story of the Popol Vuh. They do various things. I'll just go into some of them. They've got two half-brothers now. Remember, the father, Hunahpu, I mean, the spit donor, let's call him, this guy has been married before. So he's got two sons who are their half-brothers, who are jealous of them, because these grow up to be wonderful ball players and great hunters with a blowgun. They're blowgunners. Great at this kind of stuff. But these two don't like them at all and are always trying to downplay them and get them into trouble with with these two here. So these work out by one day they are shooting birds in a tree, and they come back and tell their half-brothers, oh, these birds got stuck in the tree, you know, when we hit them with a blowgun. They didn't fall back, and you go up and please bring them down for us. So these two, being suckers, go up into the tree grows and grows to a tremendous height, and they can't get down. They're stuck up there. So the hero twins start laughing at them, and they are turned into howler monkeys. Hun Bats and Hun Chen, this is one howler monkey and another way of saying one howler monkey. They're turned into howler monkeys. They're turned, who we know were the gods of the scribes, of the musicians, of the dancers, of all the arts. The Popol Vuh tells us this, and I'll show you this in archaeology. Another thing that these twins do, they're really destroyers of monsters. The kind of thing you find in the American Southwest among the Pueblos and Navajo mythology. Twins who come out to destroy monsters that are making it tough for a proper creation to happen. And there is this gigantic bird, Seven Macaw, who claims to be the son of this particular creation, but a false son, they say. And he's resplendent. His teeth are jade, his eyes are shining jade, he's covered with jewels, and boasts all the time, which is not good. So they decide to get rid of him, and they blowgun him and knock his jaw apart, knock the teeth out in his jaw. He's enraged, and Hunahpu tries to get away, and his arm is ripped off and taken up into a tree by this bird. Eventually, they fool them by getting the old man and old woman to go in as doctors, curers, to cure his teeth, because his jaw really is in terrible shape. And instead of putting real teeth back in, or jade teeth, they put in soft kernels of corn. And they can't eat, and he starts losing his power, and he falls to the ground, and that's the end of him. We'll see him also in the archaeology. There are also, this Seven Macaw has two sons. One who is a builder of mountains, and the other an earthquake, destroyer of mountains. And by various means, they get rid of them too. Long and wonderful story that I'm not going to go into here. Let's go on and now see the next part. Now, the question is, did the classic Maya, let's say, who flourished between 150, 200 AD and 900 AD, did they know about this story and whatnot? Nothing was ever said about this in any of the books or anything when I was a student. I wrote a letter to the great High Pupa of Mayan archaeology in his day, Eric Thompson. And he answered me. In fact, I asked him about this. And he said, no, it's just a myth that these people have. I can't find the letter. I wish I could. Otherwise, I show it on the screen next to me. The first guy to get onto this in any way, to hint, was this amazing person, Franz Blom, a Dane who came to Mexico and then up through the United States, became the head of the Middle American, the founder of the Middle American Research Institute at Tulane University, and an amazing guy, a wonderful explorer, but a real character. I mean, he's somebody out of a novel. In 1950, next please, Franz Blum wrote a short article on this, which is a plate, a Maya plate from the late Classic, I would guess about 700 AD approximately. And he noticed that these two characters here are blowgunning, shooting pellets. There's a pellet, each one, that they look like twins. They're identical. They've got black spots on them, and they're shooting this gigantic bird here, sitting on top of a kind of a mountain, anthropomorphic mountain with a huge head here. They're blasting him with blowgun pellets. Blum said that this, he said he can't prove it, but this sort of looks like it might be the hero twins in the Popol Vuh, which followed that. And he never followed it up. It was just that hint. That was the first guy to ever look at Maya ceramics and see this kind of thing. Next, please. Well, okay, now some autobiography. In 1971, I was asked by the Grolier Club in New York, which is a bunch of collectors and scholars in old books and manuscripts in New York, rather a posh place, to put on a show on Maya writing. And I felt right away that this is going to be difficult because, you have to borrow the people who had the known Maya books at that time. They weren't going to send these things across the Atlantic for me to show in here. But I did know that a lot of museums and a lot of private collectors, and let's face it, dealers in this kind of stuff, they had a lot of things to show. So I went and borrowed all this stuff from them. These are just two of the cases, very stodgy exhibit that we put on here. But I had dozens and dozens of pictorial Maya vases from the Classic period to look at. Nobody had ever before then seen all at once that many classic Maya vases with pictures on them. And I began to get some ideas about this, just handling them. Next, please. I mean, these vases, Eric Thompson had said that over and over that these Maya vases, the inscriptions on them, the hieroglyphs on them, the hieroglyphs don't mean anything. These people were ignorant. They were just imitating things they'd seen on the carved stone monuments and not doing it very well. But this is a rollout that my artist made for the catalog of this Grolier Club show that shows something that takes place at the beginning of creation in the year 3114 BC, the cycle that's going to end in a few months. Shows them in the underworld, all the gods meeting to decide what to do, and it has the initial date right up here. And I looked at these long inscriptions. I decided two things. One is that these Maya vases are enormously important in what they tell us, and secondly, that the hieroglyphs on them mean something. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what these things are. We now know that this kind of inscription up here tells you about the vase, tells you what it contained, in this case chocolate, sometimes the artist who painted it, and at the end of it the owner of the particular vase. Next please. What really struck me was that in many of these painted Maya vases that I borrowed for the show, you get pairs of young men, very elaborately dressed, as though they were rulers with jade all over them and whatnot, and with special markings on them, which we now know stands for mirror or bright. I call them God markings, just to show they weren't human, they were superhuman. And I was just wondering if those were the hero twins or not. Started to buzz in my head. I now know that they weren't. In fact, what they are is probably one Hunahpu and seven Hunahpu, the father and uncle of the hero twins. Carl Taube proved not long afterwards that this is just two representations of the maize god. The maize god is the father of the hero twins. Next, please. And you get these guys on all sorts of vases. You get the actual hero twins now. Now, I'll show you how I figured out they were the hero twins. Here's the god Itzamna.
the supreme deity on his throne. And here are these two guys here. This is a rollout done by Justin Kerr.
Photographic rollout of a cylindrical vase. This is a guy here. This guy here has black spots on his cheek
And a headband. And this guy is often marked with jaguar, patches of jaguar skin. Here they are again, down here on an incised Maya vase. There you can see the spots, and on one of them I'm trying to see. And on this one has a jaguar skin marking, and this one has the spots on it. And they're in front of the supreme deity on an incised Maya vase. Now how did I figure out who these people were? Next please. If you look at Maya hieroglyphic writing, which is what would be called a ladrillo in Spanish, a real heavy book by Eric Thompson, came out in 1950. I mean, it was a Bible for anybody interested in Maya hieroglyphs at that time. There isn't one mention in there of the Popol Vuh. Nothing about it. But, next please. If you look carefully at this, it's got wonderful stuff on how the Maya calendar worked and all the gods connected with specific Maya days. This is part of the sequence of 20 days of named days in the Maya calendar that run against the numbers 1 to 13, 260-day calendar. The last day is we call Ahal, which means Lord or King in Maya. And if you look down here, Eric put the names of the days in various Mayan languages. There are 29 Mayan languages. These are the ones in the highlands, the Quiche and Nirmut. And it's Ahau in Yucatan, among the Yucatec, but if you keep running across there, you come to the Quiche name, it's Hunapu. Nobody ever said anything about this. I looked at that, I said, why isn't that our Hunapu of the Popol Vuh? The same guy, one of the hero twins. So I looked at this, and let's look at it here. And you will see, if you see some of these guys, they've got those black spots on the cheek here. This is a very stylized form of Ahau, and these are the head forms down here. And many of these head forms, you can see on the cheek a black spot. Next, please. So I wrote for Justin Kerr, had a wonderful series of books he put out. He's a fantastically great photographer and a real student of Maya stuff. And he put out the Maya vase book, and in the first chapter, I wrote something called Hero Twins in Myth and Image. I think that I worked out the iconography of how to recognize hero twins in the past. And the main clue was really here, the fact that the Quiche and other people speaking very similar languages called this guy Hunapu, and he had a black spot on his cheek. Next, please. Now you come to actual representations that we now know are Hunapu, right out of the Popol Vuh, but in classic Maya art. This is an early classic Maya vase. That's a double-chambered vase with Hunapu now here shooting with his blowgun, this gigantic bird with his great beak coming down here. Here's the back side of him with his wings raised up like that, and he's marked with the sign for the sun and darkness. He has to be Uku Kakish, although that wasn't his name in classic or pre-classic times. But he's zapping him right here. Here he is down here on what I call a Codex Maya vase, a Codex style one. This is an unrolling now. This is actually a cylindrical vase, unrolled by Justin. And here's Hunapu with his black spots blasting this bird up in this tree right there. The absolutely graphic thing corresponding to the Popol Vuh. Next, please. You see these on all kinds of Maya vases if you look. Here they are here. Here's Hunapu. This is quite worn, this cylindrical vase. But there's his black spots. They're kneeling. Here's Ishpalarke, his brother, with the jaguar markings on him in front of the supreme deity. And here they are in a deer ritual down here involving deer. Next, please. Then you come across more stuff. You expand this. Remember I said that the head of the father, the maize god, was hung up in a tree. This is the one that spat in the hand of Lady Blood. And this famous vase, which is in the Popol Vuh, and we have the director of the Popol Vuh Museum here in the audience. You'll hear from him tomorrow, Osvaldo Chinchilla. You see this great vase in the Popol Vuh Museum in Guatemala, and here's the head hung up in the tree, except in this case, it's a cacao tree, it's a chocolate tree. Sometimes you see it in a calabash tree, but at any rate, that has to be the head of the maize, that is the head of the maize god hanging up in this tree. Sometimes you get the disembodied head of the maize god alone on plates like this, that probably held at one point corn tamales as an offering to the dead. Next, please. This is a spectacular plate that's in the Boston Museum of Fine Arts in what I call Codex style. And it shows the resurrection of the maize god. The hero twins in the underworld, Hunahpu and Xbalanque, resurrect their father and bring him up to the surface of the earth, where he receives all of his finery and whatnot again, and establishes himself as the maize god. So here's the surface of the earth as a turtle being split open, and out of it is arising the father, the maize god, named as here as Hun, probably Hun Ishim. And down here, the guy with the black spots, who's Hunahpu, and his brother with the jaguar skin markings, Xbalanque, had other names, and they are watering him. He sprouted up from the earth. When the Maya farmer goes and plants corn, he puts his seeds down there, 4 seeds in the ground, sends them into the underworld, dried corn, where they die. And they are resurrected when the rains come. It comes up as sprouting maize. And this is what's happening here in mythological form. Next, please. This is another vase just from the Grolier Club show. And I saw this. These are the monkey men gods. Half howler monkey and half human. And they are holding, you can't see it too well here, they're holding ink pots in their hands and brush pens. And they're going to paint, each one is going to paint a Maya folding screen book, a codex, down below. And one is specifically named as Twin, Hun Twin here. As in, these are Hun Bats and Hun Twin, the half-brothers of the Popol Vuh hero twins. Next, please. Here they are here in a rollout of a Maya cylindrical vase in codex style. These are codices you're seeing from the side with jaguar skin covers. These are monkey men, you can see here. Half part howler monkey, part human. These are the half-brothers. And the gods of they are important scribal gods. And they're pointing to something, each one in the codex here, in the book. Next, please. Okay, now the Popol Vuh and the pre-classic Maya. You're going to hear a lecture on this tomorrow, and I'm just going to say a few things about it. The classic begins, God knows when, around 150, 200 AD. Prior to that, we have a very important period, which is late pre-classic, late formative, from about 400 BC to about 150 AD. And the Popol Vuh imagery appears there, in gangbusters. Next, please. At a site called Izapa, which, this is Guatemala, right near the Guatemalan border. This is southeastern Mexico. This is the Pacific coast here. And Izapa is an incredibly important site. Next, please. Excavated by the New World Archaeological Foundation. An astronomer, now retired up at Dartmouth College, Vincent Malmstrom, wrote a book, a very interesting book about the origin of the calendar and about Izapa. Izapa is located about 15 degrees north of the equator, and there you find that zenith passage when the sun is directly overhead, takes place twice a year, as it always does in the tropics, here on August 13th and April 30th. August 13th is the beginning date in the year 3114 BC of our era. The intervals between two zenith passages is 260 days here on this parallel, which he says, and other people have said it, is the origin, perhaps, of the 260-day sacred calendar. Sunrise takes place here across Tezcatlipoca, which is the highest volcano in this part of Mesoamerica, on the solstice, right over the top of Tezcatlipoca. And the whole site is oriented to another volcano slightly northeast, Takana. So it's there for a purpose, Isapa. Next, please. Here is where it is in terms of the people who speak the Mihe-Sokian languages, which are not Maya, and those who speak Mayan languages. It's been said that this is a Mihe-Sokian site. I don't believe it for one bit. It is so Maya. The culture is 100% Maya at Isapa. Next, please. This is from courtesy of Rob Rosenzweig. He's got a LiDAR image of Isapa. It's a big site. It's oriented towards Takana up this way. And it's loaded with beautifully carved and fascinating stone monuments. And it dates somewhere between probably 300 BC and about 100 AD. It's late pre-classic. Next, please. Here's Gareth, my old friend Gareth Lowe, who dug there and ran a project for the New World Archaeological Foundation for years and wrote very perceptively on Popol Vuh imagery at Isapa. I mean, he was very early onto this. However, he always said it was Mihe-Sokian, and I'm sorry, I don't believe it. I think this is 100% Mayan. Next, please. I'll just quickly go over these monuments because time's are wasted. This one monument here, Stela 2, shows a giant bird coming down towards a tree filled with fruit. And that's exactly what you find Seven Macaw doing in the Popol Vuh. He comes down regularly to eat the fruit of a nase tree, and that's where the blowgunners, the hero twins, wait for him with their blowgun. Here is another one, the giant bird, which we now know as the principal bird deity. He's torn off Hunapu's arm. You can see the blood streaming from it. But here are the two twins waiting for him to come down, and here is Hunapu with his arm torn off before they get it back. He's coming down to a weird tree that's coming out of a crocodile. Next one. But he's in classic and pre-classic imagery, he's not all bad, this bird. In fact, he's being worshipped. And he's being worshipped here on this monument here. Here's the principal bird deity, the origin of Seven Macaw, being actually worshipped by some kind of a Maya ruler sitting on a glyph. Next, please. And here he is coming down, and some Maya ruler has put on the costume here of this principal bird deity who's coming down this way. Here, this is what he looks like. If you turn him on his side, you can see his bird beak, his eye, his nose. He's actually got a nose, and he's flying down. This is the same thing as you see here. So this imagery goes all the way back. Next, please. So I think that this whole mythical cycle involving Seven Macaw and the hero twins and the maize god and the resurrection of the maize god, I think it goes back all the way into the late pre-classic down here, particularly at Isapa and getting up into the Teten. Just going to say a few things about San Bartolo. I'll be talking more tomorrow about that. This was a fantastic discovery, one of the really great discoveries ever made in the Maya area. There's Bill Saturno. Then, I think even before he eventually got a job at the University of New Hampshire. Now he's at Boston University. He's the luckiest archaeologist in the world. he stumbles into these things. Incredible stuff. He stumbled into a looter's tunnel and he found these spectacular late pre-classic murals at San Bartolo in the northeastern Payette. See the spot on the cheek? Who is that? We'll see tomorrow. It's their version of Hunahpu. And there is Heather Hurst, who is a wonderful artist who has been copying these murals at half-scale, magnificent copies under horrific conditions, as a matter of fact. This is in northeastern Guatemala. Next one. Just quickly, just show you what I'm going to be talking about tomorrow. They are performing, hang on to your hats, penis sacrifice, perforating the penis and scattering blood, which we know that royalty did all through classic Mayan time, even into the post-classic. But you have multiple Hunahpu. There are 4 images of Hunahpu here in these great murals. There's the bird sitting on the tree, and you have other birds shown coming down, flying down to sit on the tree. These are sacrifices that are being offered to the bird. So the bird isn't just a villain, he's a great god. Next, please. There he is again with his black spots. You can recognize him right away. And there's our friend, the principal bird deity, sitting on his tree, as he did in Isapa. This is like Isapa in Technicolor. Next, please. And then finally, the resurrection of the maize god on the north wall of San Bartolo, where he has come up and he's being offered food and drink and jewelry and all kinds of things by lovely young ladies and others here. It's an incredible discovery and wonderful, wonderful iconography here. Next, please. So I say, you can run away with yourself on this Popol Vuh imagery and start saying, well, everything's the hero twins, you know. The latest is that it's been claimed that this frieze at El Mirador, this gigantic site, the biggest of all, north of Tikal, right up on the border with Mexico, northernmost Guatemala. It's been claimed that there's a guy like this and there's his match over here, that these are the hero twins. But they totally lack the iconography that's necessary for the hero twins. If he was showing spots on his body, I'd say, okay, maybe. But I put a question mark on it. The other thing is, in San Lorenzo, the site that I was at for 3 years, they found these 2 statues here, which are identical, absolute twins. Are these the hero twins? We just don't know. We don't have the information for them. I think this Popol Vuh story really, next please, and last. The Popol Vuh story really starts in the late pre-classic. I think this mythology picks up, and I think it's really comes out of Isapa. I really think Isapa is one of the most important sites in the New World. And there's where it comes from. And it ends up with this great mythological story. The story's great. If you haven't read the Popol Vuh, for Pete's sake, go out, get it on Amazon. It's worth it. It's there. It really has the Maya soul like no other document that we've had. And it's a beautiful and it's a wonderful piece of literature. So I leave you with that, and don't forget to check with Amazon on the Popol Vuh.